Awesome. All right, so we got Paul Wilson here today on Attribution Time. I am stoked about this. I had a post on LinkedIn. Paul chimed in. We connected, and about marketing attribution. And so I'm really pumped. Our conversations building up to this have just gotten me really excited about your insight that you have around marketing attribution, the future that it holds. Your title's chief strategist at GTM Systems. Let's be real. I mean, you that's your business. You run it. That's your gig, right?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So the evolution of what I'm doing now is I think there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of change happening in technology, in data, in process. And I think that there's going to be an alignment between customer operations, sales operations, and marketing operations. And I think that whole new paradigm of go to market is it's definitely where technology is going to take us. It's what customer experience has always been about. So GTM Systems is focused on how do businesses align those three currently siloed disciplines into one overarching go-to-market experience for prospects and customers.
Yeah, I think when we first connected, the GTM, the go-to-market, this term is becoming really vital, right? And for that exact reason, it is going to be where everything kind of sits underneath this. And you and I were talking, and we like made this connection to Drew, and it's like, yep. So it's just a small world in that, but it's I'm 100% in agreement with that. But it's really interesting to hear your perspective though around this go-to-market motion, how these different systems that will sit underneath that, and then where marketing attribution sits.
Right.
And give me some insight into that, because I really love this topic here. It's not really about I own this channel or I own this much revenue and I did this, but it's a lot more, and we have to zoom out a bit to really understand it.
Right. So marketing attribution has always been it's a dark science. And so it's one of those areas where it means everything to everyone. And as soon as marketers are trying to justify their spend based on mathematical formula that they try to attribute a decision that happened months down the road in a relationship with a seller, or a renewal that happened even farther down the road from a CSM, that notion of the butterfly effect, the wings of marketing affected everything downstream, has always been a challenge. And I think as attribution evolves, it's going to become less about math and divisions and more about patterns and nuance.
Yeah.
And I think the long tail evolution of what we will see when there is a centralized overall repository of data that spans marketing, selling, and customer success, we'll see a melding together of what attribution really means. And I think that that's an evolution that is just kind of like the change in customer experience operations. It's going to be what happens when those large volumes of data exist. And it'll be less about trying to say this dollar made that dollar happen. It'll be about the nuances of this is working in the market, this is not working in the market.
Yep.
And attribution becomes the math underneath those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that hits home for me. Living in this world for 5 or so years, it's you're having these conversations, and part of the reason why I started this podcast is helping people understand how do we articulate marketing attribution and scale this to the executives. And what I'm realizing is to your point, we can't just sit there and sit in these funnels and all of the things and be competitive about who owns what. It's really going to get to a point where we take all this data, we translate this data. We have to have a system that does that for marketers or for whatever department.
Right.
Because we're not as technical. We're not engineers, right? I'm not. Like I don't build things. And so having a tool that will do that, I think, is where these attribution tools are headed. And so it's really interesting to see this movement within that. So
well,
give me a little bit.
Just I want to pick up on one little thread there. Sorry, but when you're talking about not being an engineer and the mathematics of all of this, one of the difficulties for me related to attribution that has always been on the table that I don't think people really like to talk about is there are so many backstory components to the moment that gets someone that registers for a summit and then attends and goes, and it's very difficult to say that marketing made them attend when the company they're at needs to be in the market for the product.
Right.
And so there's all of these other nuances behind that initial move that means fighting over the table scraps of what made someone do something has always felt kind of artificial to me. And I think that companies I've seen do attribution and attribution modeling well are not in the weeds about no, I made this happen. It's more that the nuanced effect of this messaging seems to be working, events seem to be working, and it's that aggregate picture of the world that seems more important.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that's how marketing attribution tools were first sold. All right. Because I remember when I was first implementing these tools way back when, the marketing team was like, great, now we're going to be able to own this, and we're going to be able to show them that we did this. And we had to, like, even then consult them, like, that's not the goal of this tool. But in hindsight, it's like, no, that's probably how it was sold. Like, this was sold to a marketing team.
That's
like,
right.
You're going to do this. And so there's that shift there. And I see on LinkedIn where people are often like, yeah, marketing attribution never worked because of exactly what you're saying, because of these silos, because people are trying to own this and this and this. And it's like, well, that's just the mindset that you or whoever had when implementing a marketing attribution tool. That was just like, that was your thought process. That's not that's really not the design of any of these tools, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and to that point, I go back to the original, like the very original, like way of doing marketing attribution, asking someone like, where did you hear about us, right? And this kind of crept back up in recent times, but it's really this idea of, but to your point, like, that's how someone remembers you. It's still valid. And so it's all these different data points, right? It's not
like
about
A/B testing. This subject line is absolutely better than that subject.
Yeah.
No,
I don't, yeah, exactly. No, it's so good. So tell me a little bit of, like, we talked a little bit about like machine learning in our past conversations, and like where we think that's headed, because I think that is the future, right? Anytime I ask someone what's the future of marketing attribution, they're like, well, it's AI or it's machine learning, it's this and that. But what's interesting in that is everyone has a different interpretation of what the outcome is going to be. So tell me what you think the outcome of that is as we move to a system, to marketing attribution systems that are going to ingest all of the data.
Yep.
They're going to process all this data, and sure, they're going to have some form of attribution modeling to it to help make decisions. But what's the future hold there?
Yeah. So what I kind of see is an ecosystem where multiple sources of data come into a sort of a central repository of all transactional events that happen, from an email being sent, open, clicked, and someone landing on the landing page, to a conversation that happens in Drift or Qualified or one of those interactive tools, to outreach cadences that are sent by sales, records of activities logged in the CRM. Like, all of that information becomes the breadcrumbs of what leads an account to do something. So you've got all of that information in a repository about the humans. You have all the information in the repository about the events that have occurred. And all of that information becomes a data set that can be processed using machine learning. And we talk about this, ChatGPT has awakened the world at large to the current state of machine learning. But marketing operations professionals have been doing machine learning since the dawn of lead scoring. So that notion of synthesizing activities, processing them, scoring them, and working with them. And there are vendors in the market today who, there was the Visible acquisition by Marketo. There's products in the world that do some of the simple math related to what machine learning can do for attribution. And then there are platforms and tools like ORM technologies that have a deeper picture and algorithms that are educated and tweaked to do the math that sees deeper into the large data sets. And what systems like that will do for marketers is it associates more of those events. It pulls together more of those patterns, maps them to the personas and the accounts. And then beyond just doing the simple math of looking in the rear view mirror and knowing how you got to where you are, these more advanced implementations that use advanced algorithms to synthesize and process data are then able to do some predictive work to be able to say, okay, in this geography, these kinds of events of this sort targeted to these personas. And that kind of capability exists today, and it's been in the market for 6-7 years. And I think that as we see the evolution of more data across more of the customer life cycle come to bear, that's when we'll see that alignment farther into the sales cycle and into that renewal cycle.
Yeah, that's what nailed it on the head. And to your point, like we're seeing marketing operations do that now. They've been doing this process for a long time. I touched on that in my book, a marketing attribution book, where it's just like, this is just kind of second nature to ops people. Right. How do we build something? How do we simplify this process? How do we understand the buyer's journey? That's like the bread and butter around operations, right? And so I was just having a conversation with a brilliant analyst who's using Marketo Measure, but for that exact reason, they're using this tool that has a data lake or a data warehouse. It's organized information, and they say, okay, well, what's our buying group? Like, we think it's this. We think our buying group is this. What is this tool telling us? Who are our key accounts? What rather than assuming and creating ICPs with what we think our product offers them, we can take all this analysis of however long we've had this data and say, this is actually who's buying from us, or here's our biggest deals, right? And I just think that's exactly where this is headed, right? It's far greater than channels and grouping by campaigns and all of this. It's going to really accelerate the buyer process and that journey for very big enterprise organizations that can manage that kind of data.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I think that the other benefit of those sorts of engines, when they're properly tooled, they can work outside the confines of the systems that we're sitting in front of today.
Yeah.
So one of the examples of a limitation is there are platforms who only process the records related to the opportunity record in Salesforce. And so when you're looking for a way to distribute opportunity or campaign influence on opportunities, the platform itself is limited to the limited behaviors available inside other platforms. And I think that one of the best benefits that we'll see of harmonizing all data into a lake or a warehouse, whatever you want to call the repository, it normalizes and can insulate for some of those human behavior factors that get in the way, frankly, of really seeing everything that goes into influencing an opportunity.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, that's so rich. All right, so one, you mentioned ORM technologies.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the board. Give us a little bit more detail, because on this podcast, I feel like a lot we talk about Measure. We've talked about maybe like, I know Hockey Stack was potentially mentioned, or at least I know I've talked to people around that, as well as some other attribution tools. So give me a little bit more insight around ORM technologies.
Sure. So ORM is a team of PhDs in mathematics. So really foundationally, what they do is work with all of the nuance and the information of the algorithms that can ingest large volumes of data. They have a lot of experience in the notion of optimization, and optimization is a mathematical concept. In fact, I didn't realize this until I was exposed to it through ORM. And that notion of optimization is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where you have a large volume of data and there are algorithms and processes that can be pointed at it. But one of the great benefits about ORM is it has that advanced math capability to really synthesize the nuances of one company's data. So you see, to me, one of the scariest notions is where you see platforms where it's like, put in your Marketo login, enter your Salesforce credentials, we will tell you what has happened in your company.
Sure.
We all know what kind of data is sitting behind both of those systems and all of that noise.
Yeah.
So what ORM does is each implementation is very tailored, and they ingest volumes of data outside of just that normal data set. Like I was alluding to earlier, it isn't just about the people on the opportunity record. It's all of the information related to the account. And so by processing and seeing all of that long tail event activity, synthesizing it using the advanced algorithms that they have, you're really able to get a picture of your data and what your data means, because they are able to normalize and correct for some of the behaviors and problems that we all know exist. A new sales operations team comes in, and all of a sudden there's no longer 6 stages to an opportunity record, there's 10. And so you need to go back, normalize the historical data, really understand what that meant, and be able to really move with the data as the data moves. And so ORM Technologies really has that, very strong analytic capability and the very important tooling that says your data is what we're ingesting. It isn't just flat data, and we will apply an algorithm to it. So
yeah, you nailed it on the head, right? Because there's dirty data no matter where you're at. The common theme through a marketing attribution is, or any operational processes, you got to clean up your data. And then, if you just have a tool that just runs with whatever your data, like just the basic output that any software puts out, you're going to have your own challenges. And then you're just going to have to navigate through that. And it's going to be its own time intensive piece. Awesome, Paul. This is awesome. So the big takeaways I want everyone to hear, or you really gather from this, is this go-to-market motion, and how everything's going to kind of roll up underneath this, and how the future of data through marketing attribution tools is going to be able to give the GTM org or whoever's managing that better, deeper, more functional insights. And then they can use machine learning, they can use all these other things. So there might be someone helping them, there might not, but at the end of the day, this data repository that's able to process this type of data to make these decisions is going to really help the go-to-market motion. Is that I feel like that's what we got out here, and that's just such a good thought.
Absolutely. And I think one of the roles of marketing technology professionals today is stepping into that realm, is being able to represent and explain the data sets that we have, and helping move them into this new landscape, so that we're stewards of what that digital experience feels like. And so as machine learning comes in, and that digital experience is more and more something that marketers curate, not actually deliver, we need to make sure that we have that voice at the table, and we're a strong presence in how that data gets curated and how it gets managed forward before it's synthesized and processed.
So good. I love it. Paul, thanks so much for being on Attribution Time. This is just an awesome conversation. I know a lot of people get a lot of insight out of it. So thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Loved it. Thanks, Ian.